Adventure design is such a big part of our campaigns, and for most Dungeon Masters it is a time-consuming mess which feels more like a session of creative writing than preparation for a fun game. It's easy to understand how so many Dungeon Masters get burnt out and stop playing, but today I'm going to share with you guys the style of game that I'm currently running and the types of adventures that you can run for your players. I think preparation is very important, but I think we spend too much time preparing the wrong things. There is so much focus on things like adventure paths, right? Where the players follow a defined story from start to end. This overarching story can sound really exciting, but the reality is it's not just a lot of work for you, but it's also for your players too. It's a lot of investment from them. Frodo and Sam were definitely on an adventure path, and it led them from the Shire all the way to Mount Doom in Mordor. Merry and Pippin, on the other hand, they went all over the place and didn't really have a defined path. They were sandboxing. I mean, they literally got captured by orcs and taken towards Isengard only to escape what must feel like the most dangerous random encounter for orcs, which was obviously the Rohirrim. Whilst both types of adventure design definitely works and seems fun, one is definitely a lot more work and preparation than the other. When you run adventure paths, you sequence events, and that's the big thing that we want to focus on, right? Is your sequencing. It's the idea of A happens, then B happens, then C happens. And what I want to open your eyes and mind to today is the idea of a situation. Some of you might have heard of this, but for those of you who haven't heard of it before, we're going to be talking about this today and talking about a lot of things. We're going to be also talking about different types of adventures you can run. It's quite a good video. My dog is scratching at the door. He wants to come and talk to you guys as well, clearly. But it's discussed on the Alexandrian blog, which I'll post a link to in the description. And honestly, great blog. Would recommend you guys check it out and read it for a lot of different things. And it talks about a set of circumstances which allow for creative thinking. It's prepping without a plot, and honestly, it's fantastic. The focus of your preparation revolves around designing the locations, the NPCs, and the monsters, and thinking, well, what do the NPCs have? What do the monsters have at their disposal? What can they do? How can they thwart the party? The funny thing is that I find this a lot easier to do than preparing a plot from start to finish, because I have to really overthink a plot, and like I said, I'm having to actually create a sequence of events and figure out, well, if this doesn't happen, what's going to happen instead? And that can be quite overwhelming, right? But all it really requires me to do is react and improvise to what my players are doing in the moment. That in itself is a very liberating experience for me as a Dungeon Master, and it allows me to feel more like an active participant at the table rather than somebody who's just reading from a script, looking at what the sheet from my prep says, you know? And I feel like you're not also wasting as much time either. You know, there's plenty of adventures I've ran where half the adventure or more wasn't even used because the party went a different direction or figured things out too quickly or just didn't follow a certain clue. My focus is now on designing locations, NPCs, and encounters. And I really enjoy making towns primarily. And if you guys are looking for a guide on creating towns, check out my recent book, Designing Hex Towns on Drive-Thru RPG. It's a unique take on settlement design using hexes, and it's filled with charts and tables that you guys can use to flesh out towns and cities in really just a matter of minutes. It's currently priced at around $2. Thank you so much to everybody who's bought it so far. Honestly, wow. Thank you. When it comes to designing adventures, the focus should really be on the obstacles and the conflict, not the solution. I personally believe that we as Dungeon Masters shouldn't really be coming up with the correct way for our players to complete a challenge. Our focus should be on crafting the various challenges and thinking, well, what can my monsters use to slow down the players? This can be anything from puzzles to traps to just mooks, random grunt monsters that you can throw at the players. And it's up to the players to figure out, well, how do we deal with what the Dungeon Master has presented, what the enemy is presented? And I think allowing this and encouraging this is going to really set a positive precedent at your table that your players' choices have value and weight. And I felt really frustrated in the past as a player. I'm sure you guys have as well, when the Dungeon Master really tries to push you towards a certain solution to a problem. Especially when it's a solution that we don't really want to do, we think is like boring, like, oh, you're supposed to sneak into that place. Well, maybe we didn't want to sneak into that place. As a player, I want to feel like my decisions matter, and I don't want to be told by the Dungeon Master that it's stupid or that their idea is better. Maybe they should be a player if they want to be the ones coming up with the solutions to problems. And there's going to be risk and potential consequences no matter what we do, realistically, unless we roll like, natural 20s or something. And even then, maybe, who knows, right? So let the players determine the plan. Looking back, it's clear that the Dungeon Master I'm thinking of had a bit of an invisible road, a bit of a railroad set up that we were supposed to follow. And whilst that's fine, it's just not really as exciting for me. I think the only questions that we should really be focusing on during actual play is, what are the bad guys trying to do, and what can they do to stop the characters from interfering? It's all about knowing the toolkit of your villains, of your enemies. What can they use to thwart the party? What obstacles can they bring to bear? Examples could be anything from personnel to equipment, locations like castles and lairs, and important information that could be used to unravel their entire plot, like, trying to assassinate the king or something. Understanding your toolkit for an adventure will allow you to present meaningful challenges in elaborate ways, and also, you can improvise stuff, and that's really fun. There are times where I'm halfway through a session and the players are going in a direction I think is really interesting, so I start improvising stuff, and it gets really, really exciting for me because I don't know what's going to happen yet. My players obviously don't, but I don't know either. Are they going to be able to win? Are they going to run away? What's going to happen? Is anybody going to die? Right? Are they going to be able to defeat the villain? Let's talk about the different types of adventures that you can run. And in my opinion, they fall into 3 categories. That is location-based adventures, event-based adventures, and character-driven adventures. And location-based adventures are exactly as they sound. They are based on a location. All of your dungeons, lairs, crypts, temples, caverns are going to be most likely location-based adventures. I like these adventures to be very open. I like it to be very sandboxy. Let the players do what they want, right? If it's a dungeon, it might have multiple entrances, various corridors and tunnels that they can get lost in, and different ways to explore and overcome the challenges that are set there. Maybe there's a room full of skeletons. Well, they could throw a rock down the corridor and lure the skeletons out. They could send the cleric in to turn undead. I don't know. They could dress up as skeletons and shimmy their way through the room. I've seen hilarious things in the past. I had a group of players who one of them dressed up as a gardener to try and sneak by a animated statue that only allowed gardeners to go past and it's just a really funny thing. Because I thought, they'll just fight the statue or sneak around, but they're like, nah, let's just dress up as gardeners and take a pitchfork. and it didn't work, but it was good. It was good. I gave him advantage. This didn't really roll very well. But I find that these are the easiest adventures to run. Especially if I'm using like a pre-made dungeon from a module or an adventure. It's important to make sure that you understand what you're running and what points of the adventure you can highlight and make memorable moments for your players. I'm in the process of actually making a video about crafting dungeons, and it's been something that people have been asking me to do for a while. And I want to study more about dungeon design from the top creators and the experts in the field before I really publish my findings to you guys. So, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and yeah, I was good. Don't know what else I was going to say about call to action, but yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing, and if you want to get a notification when that video goes live. I'm hoping it will be finished by the end of the month. We'll see. I've got lots of projects going on at the moment. I'm working on a couple of adventures at the moment, which, whilst they will be probably for Shadow Dark, I'm going to try and make it system agnostic as I can, so pretty much anybody can play it. Thanks, guys. The next one is event-based adventures, and these are usually quite narrative. I feel like this is what I usually use for like role-playing adventures, or adventures that the party don't really have as much control over as they wish. It could be anything from like a festival, tournament. It could be the arrival of a foreign army that wants to attack the area. Or it could be like a natural disaster, like an earthquake, hurricane, tsunami. These adventures require a little bit more thought from you, and whilst I wouldn't, I try and keep it as a situation in regards to your design. I think having a couple of events out of sequence isn't awful, at least to know like what's going to happen on the first day of the festival, what's going to happen on the second day of the festival, what's going to happen on the third day. That stuff's really good. I would recommend that. But those events are going to happen whether the party are involved or not. It's just, it's nothing that they need to worry about, and they don't even need to be there for every event, right? It's just, they might be there. They might be somewhere else. They might be outside of town. They might be in the sewers fighting bandits or gangsters. Who knows, right? It really depends on what you're looking to do. And for our festival example, one of the events could be, and maybe an adventure, could be a religious procession that is moving through the streets. Perhaps a group of skilled thieves attack the procession in broad daylight and steal a couple of priceless artifacts. Now the party have been tasked by the local clergy to find these thieves and retrieve the relics. And I mean, let's give you guys an outline for this adventure using the 3-clue rule. We have the intro, we have a couple of events, and then we have the clues. There is also a really good blog post on the Alexandrian about the 3-clue rule. And honestly, this guy is very experienced. He knows his stuff, and it's the idea, the basis that your players are probably going to ignore the first clue. They're not going to realize that the second one's there, and if they're lucky they might find the third one, right? One thing I do like to do when I run kind of mysteries and stuff like that is actually present the information relatively quickly. Don't just expect the players to roll 100 checks, because you're setting up a lot of degrees of failure for them, and you're making it very difficult for them to actually succeed. Sometimes it's better just to say you arrive at the crime scene, you see blood on the floor, you see, that the window has been smashed. You're setting them up for success, but they still have to do some investigating, rather than just saying, it's a room. What do you want to do? There's a dead man on the floor and there's blood. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to give them some clues. You've got to give them some information. Here is the toolkit I'd use for that adventure as well. The thieves have a safe house located under the tavern called the Green Apple, which has kept them mostly hidden since the theft. Yeah, the theft. Local urchins are associated with the thieves and are willing to help them stay protected using deception and intrigue. The leader of the thieves is a member of the Skull Gang and has the blessing and protection of the gang leader, meaning 3d6 gangsters are at their disposal. The gang has managed to bribe the local guard captain to turn a blind eye to their behavior. And this toolkit, it allows us to be able to react to what our players are doing. I might decide during the adventure that the relics are being sold in the evening at a local auction in the black market, or if they're crafty, Maybe they've discovered the location of the safe house where the relics are being kept, or maybe they spot the people in transit between the two locations. I will base the information that I feed to my players off of their choices and behavior, and I want to be able to react. I don't want to have to stick to this outline that I've created using plot points. And if they're being brash, kicking down doors and capturing thieves, I really like the idea of them like getting some of the guards involved from the church and interrupting the auction with the clash of steel and having this big like showdown. That just sounds really exciting to me. And I imagine if the players are kind of like that, they like to be brash and stuff, they would really enjoy that too. But if they're being quiet, careful, the idea of them doing a heist on the safe house sounds really cool. They're picking off guards, sneaking down corridors, picking locks and stuff like that, using spells to overcome some of the challenges. Either way, I might need a battle map for a couple of rooms of a building. That's not too difficult to do, right? And using the situation, I'm very happy to be flexible with my players. All I need is, like I said, like a battle map of a building. Maybe one that's got like a big room for like an auction, like a hall, right? It's quite simple to do on Dungeon Scroll, which is the app that I use on dungeonscroll.com. It's very good for making battle maps. I'd recommend it. I find that if I fully design an adventure from start to finish, it doesn't really leave me with a lot of wriggle room to go outside of what I've prepared. And I've obviously spoken about this already, but it's funny because those kind of adventures aren't just railroads for players, but it's a huge railroad for the Dungeon Master too. We get so caught up with how things are supposed to be that we don't stop to realize how things should be going based on what our players are doing. I think we get in our own heads about the adventures that we have created, but I think our priority should be just about creating dynamic stories that can really go anywhere, right? Just focus on creating the points in the plot that will add depth and character and allow your players to gain progression through it that way. Character-driven adventures is all about the NPCs and the player characters. These tend to be player-driven, and I think for a lot of players, it's the most exciting because they tend to be more personal. It's unlikely that they're going to be major adventures or quests, but more likely to be like story arcs that can be used to add more depth to a character in your world. I know that not everybody likes backstories, but I know that a lot of people have backstories, and I always find it interesting when like a sibling or a parent or a child is involved in the story in some degree, and having them be memorable NPCs that have been caught up with local criminals, that's an example of one that I think is really, really good. The party can investigate and try to find them, and I think it conveys a lot more emotion, or it kind of gets a lot more emotion out of our players, and I think that's something I care about a lot. I want my players to be emotional at the table, not all the time, but I think it's good for them to show that they're happy, they're sad, they're upset, they're angry, they're elated. These different emotions create the upbeat and the downbeat for our stories, and I think it's a good way for us to understand what we should do in the moment to be able to play off of those emotions, right, and actually kind of get more out of our players, make the experience more exciting for them, because that's what a good story is, in my opinion, the ups and downs, And these type of adventures will work wonders, especially if you have a group that really do like backstories. Maybe the next fighter's father was slain by a six-finger man, and one day they are told by a local that they've seen a six-finger man who works for the king or something like that. And it adds so much investment for your players. They really want to push and follow that story and actually complete it. And you don't have to make it so easy for them either. You can make it a long-term payoff if you wish, especially for a story as big as that. I think a good mixture of the three different types of adventures is what I would recommend in order to run a successful game. The big development in my DMing style is the push towards emergent storytelling over pre-planned narratives and using charts and tables to create content. I enjoy running the game as like a neutral arbiter, right? Working out what's going to happen as a result of the player's actions and seeing what direction the story will go next. One thing I really dislike is playing with dungeon masters who are very adversarial, who are very unhappy when they roll bad. They don't seem to be able to enjoy the player's successes because they're too caught up in their own personal need to, I don't know, kill players and create serious challenge for them, that they can't kind of enjoy the combined effort from the DM and the players in terms of the story. Thank you for watching today's video. Make sure to check out my Discord if you'd like to join our public community and play in our community events. Also consider becoming a patron as well. I release a lot of systems, adventures, and sometimes even exclusive videos on there. So if you're interested, check out the link in the description below. I'll see you guys next time on Loki's Lair. Until then.